On the first data field, count of batch size. But when you drag it and drop it, it defaults to sum. It defaults to sum. So what we're going to do is click on the drop down. Click on the drop down, click on value field settings, and change it to count. Change it to count. And then click on number format, and see the number format is just number, no decimal places, but use the comma. Okay, come on out, choose OK, and now you'll see ones all the way down.
I'm sorry, number fields was where?
Number fields, comma for thousands, and no decimal places.
I'm sorry, I missed where you clicked on number fields at the beginning.
I'm going back in again. Going back in, value of field settings, number format, bottom left-hand corner. Number format.
Okay.
You okay? You okay? Everyone okay over here? Okay? Okay, now let's go to the next one, data field. Custom name, average of variable materials per unit. Well, let's have a look up here. Variable materials per unit. Drag it and drop it under the count of batch, and do what we did before. Click on the drop down, value of fields, change it to average. Change it to average. Number format. Number format, you can see that it is currency with 3 decimal places. Currency, 3 decimal places. Choose OK. Starting to look great. Starting to look great. Yes, sir.
Do you want us to use the comma to separate on everyone?
Well, because it's, yeah, use the comma, but it won't go over thousands. But yeah, it says here to put the comma in.
Oh.
So I did have the comma. You okay in here? Everyone's okay? Good. The Mac people were not with us yet? You still trying to download stuff?
It's saying download legacy edition of Java, which is version 6, which hasn't been supported in a couple of years, so looking to find out about that.
I don't know about the Apple people, what we can do for you. Everyone else okay? All the Windows people okay? Does anybody in Windows need help? Yes.
When you click numbers format, you go to currency.
Okay. I'm doing, oh, listen. I'm on the second data value on row 25, data field. That's the official term, data field, row 25. I'm on the second one. It is the variable materials per unit, and we want it to be average. So I've dragged it and dropped it into values. Click on the drop down, value of field setting, change it to average, change it to average, change the number format, change the number format to currency, 3 decimal places, prefix with a dollar symbol, and just use the one at the top. Okay? Yes?
I just want to throw out, if you just wanted to follow exactly what it shows, like for the format and the direction, you can go to custom and you can find exactly like what it looks like. Just click that if it makes it easier for you.
No. If you change it here, when we change the pivot table, it won't change it. It will revert back to its initial state.
How does that?
Because the length of this pivot table is going to change up and down. You'll see. So right now, I have, scroll to the bottom, I'm down at row 780. If I choose another apricot halves, let's go down, I don't know where I'm going to go to, I'm down at 275. So it was less, but if I had gone further than 780, I would have lost my formatting. So you have got to set the formatting as I indicated, under the control of the pivot table. Okay? Because the pivot table is controlling everything.
And you still set it under the control of pivot table? Or just do it custom?
Yes, yeah, but if you try to do, I thought you meant this, come up here,
That's right.
format, if you try to do that, that will not successfully do it. Okay, so over here, value fields is the correct way to do it. Okay? Now, let's keep going. Let's go to the third one. I want to get to the bottom of this page today. I want to do range names. Okay? Range names is the tricky part. Next thing, so you can go ahead, work ahead of me. Do the labor. Okay? Do labor. Now, to speed it up a little bit, don't worry about doing number format in class. You can do that when you get home. Okay? Just drag and drop the items and make sure you have set it to average. So I've done my labor. I'm now on to variable overhead. And if you just click in the box alongside, it will default the variable overhead into value. Change it to average again. Now down to total fixed cost. And now I'm about to add my total product cost, right at the bottom. Okay? So, I've got all mine loaded. I go right over to column G. I've omitted the formatting and I can do that later. You can do it later. Anyone need help? People in Windows, okay? See people doing it? Good. Okay, you finished? You got them all done up to column G? Column G? Good, good. Columns, good. G? Got everything through to column G done? Almost. So, In column G, you should have average of total product cost. Now, anyone need more time? Anyone on the Windows?
Are your numbers different because you chose apricot?
Yes, I've got apricots, yeah. Good question. Thank you, young man.
Thank you.
So you've got all, right? You probably still have all selected. Okay, I'll go back to all. Okay, that's the default, all the data in the database. Okay. Everyone in Windows, okay? Does anybody in Windows need more time? Or you're up? You've got all the data values entered? Yes, young lady?
I'm missing, average, of variable overhead per unit, calculated number.
Okay. Choose your pivot table. Choose your pivot table. Here are all the items: fixed cost, product cost, variable overhead was the one at the bottom. See it?
Okay, I see.
Got it? Okay. Now, I think everybody is at the same point I'm at. The format, you can take care of that later. Now, if you'll just come over to the page field, also known as the filter field, and just choose any product. Just choose any product, doesn't matter. Just choose any product. I'll choose asparagus, cuts and tips. Now, what happened when I chose my product? What happened when you chose your product? Well, the pivot table changed. How did it change? It went out to the database and it pulled in all the records that are only, in my case, asparagus cuts and tips. So whatever you've chosen, it went out and got that data. And it completed the pivot table for what we had built in the pivot table. Now, what I want to do is a topic that relates specifically to my class, cost and management. But if you are going to leave here and work in accounting, you are going to work in pivot tables. Auditors. You know, I mentioned it once before, I have the Pete Marwick in-house materials where they've got 15,000 employees sitting in a database, Access database, and they've got 30-something thousand paychecks. Sorry, 300 employees, 15,000 paychecks, and you've got to find fraud. So people who got a paycheck after termination, common example of fraud. So if I'm in charge of payroll at Siemens and this person left, think of all the employees, they wouldn't notice if I cut another paycheck for her and stuck it in my pocket, because she wasn't expecting it. So I'll put it in my pocket. Common fraud. Okay? She's a cousin. The firm doesn't know it. I'll cut 2 paychecks for her. Give her 2 paychecks. She's due to start work next week. She's a cousin. She doesn't start work till next week, but I give her a paycheck in the previous payroll month. Put on the payroll sooner than she should be. So there's all sorts of fraud that when you leave here and you work in auditing, you've got to be able to find it through pivot tables. That's how it's done. You're not going to get a printout and go through it manually trying to find errors in the payroll system. You've got to know how to use a pivot table to find those errors. Well, fraud's not for my class. We're going to do something that is appropriate. We're going to do regression. Okay? So, what we're going to do now is let's come back to the landscape sheet. We've finished to row 23. And we have no casualties except the Mac people. But But all the Windows people are doing just fine, right? I don't know of any Windows person.
I'm sorry, just with this cash symbol, should it be that far off? Something I just gotta change on it.
What? What's wrong?
The cash symbol's over there.
How did you set the symbol? Did you set it through number format?
To verify that.
Have to do it through number format.
Okay.
Okay. And did you choose currency or, okay? Now, so we're now at the next stage, row 25. Now, row 25, we've got no casualties at the moment, which is encouraging. Tells me that you can do this. But this is the most difficult part we're about to do right now. You get one typing mistake and you're going to have to start it again. Not the pivot table, you're going to have to start the range name again. It is so easy to botch this up. Now, am I nervous? Folks, I didn't do it on this machine. I got 7 computers at home and I can work all 7 with my eyes closed. But not this one. I'm not familiar with it except when I come into class. So, I gotta be a little careful down here. Okay? You gotta be careful. But once you get it set up, you watch what's gonna happen. This is really powerful now. What we're going to do is we're going to create a name for that cell all the way down to that cell. Okay? And you know that when I change the product, this goes up and down, doesn't it? Because you saw that when I changed it for somebody before, you saw I had 700 records, then I had 200 records, right? So this dynamically changes. So when I create a name here, I want the name, if the data can change dynamically, I want the name to do what? To change dynamically. It's called a dynamic range name. So as the data changes in Excel, the name changes. Why do I want that to happen? Well, here's why we want that to happen. When I come up here to my regression, let's just take a peek. Look what I've done. Line S, I have a name called Y underscore dependent X underscore independent. So let's come back over to my pivot table. So this is the batch size, the number of units that's in the batch. So this is the batch size. That's my dependent or independent variable, wait. And in column G is my average of total product cost. So it's $9,494 to make that one batch, and it had 6,820 units in it. And when it had 7,320 units in it, the cost was $9,146. And let's jump up to 8,190 units. The cost went up to $11,200. Production data. And I want to do a regression. Y equals mx plus b. What is y? Y is column G, average of total product cost. What is x? X is column A, the number of units in the batch. So as the number of units goes up and down, what happens to the cost? Goes up and down. And you and me, cost of management accountants at firms, they need to know the fixed and variable costs. I have done it for Del Monte's products. It could have been 400, 4,000 activities at Siemens, Lockheed Martin. Doesn't matter, we do it the same way. So we're going to do it for these products. But I'm not going to ask you to do all 300 products. What am I asking you to do? Just a couple. Just a couple. Okay? So, what we need to do now is to create these dynamic range names, so that when the data in the pivot table changes, the regression automatically changes. I don't have to do 300 regressions. I do one regression, just one. And we're going to do a table, that regression, line S, and we're going to do a chart. And the chart, well, it's been removed, but the chart will also dynamically change. And we'll do that on Wednesday. Questions?
So those are like the standard costs that we're finding pretty much.
This is the actual cost from production. This is what actually took place in production. And we now want to do a regression and find out what is fixed and what is variable.
That doesn't relate at all to the standard cost? Like the
No, I'm back in chapter 8. I could make it more difficult, do standard costing, but no, this is actual cost. What was the actual cost? Okay?
I just remember reading that, like, to find the cost, they would ask, they'd ask engineers, and they would use data, like you're doing, to find the
Absolutely.
realm of it.
Absolutely, but no, I'm a little simpler than that. Okay, so now we've got to set up these dynamic range names. Okay? Now, you may remember back earlier in the semester when we were doing cost, volume, profit analysis, remember the cells, I gave them names, and the names mirrored exactly what was in the chapter. Okay? I don't know if you remember that. I could bring the file up. Just let me bring it up, refresh your memory on it. Okay. That is cell E4, but it's also Q. Because in the chapter, the quantity was uppercase Q. And in the chapter, I reviewed this with you. In the chapter, the price was $75 per unit, but it was also lowercase p. That's how they defined it in the chapter. And if we come down to variable cost, in the chapter, they defined it as lowercase v. And I made the comment to you back in chapter 9, I wouldn't have used those symbols. And I've told Dr. Stout, bad selection of symbols. Because V, variable cost, probably should be uppercase VC per U, for variable cost per unit. And when you come down here in the chapter, they said fixed cost was uppercase F in the chapter. So I named the cell F. And that was easy. I remember doing this for you. So I've selected cell D3. It's easy to give that cell a name. there's more than one way to do it, but this is the easy way. So I could come up here and type UCF, okay? It is still D3, it's still D3, but it also has a name now. The name is UCF. Well, that's easy. Those are called simple names in Excel. Let me close this down. What we're going to do is give that entire column of data a name, but as the data changes, the name changes. That's the most advanced name you can use in Excel. It's called a dynamic range name. So let's do it. Let's do it. Now, all I ask from you is don't get excited if we have some problems. I may have some. You probably will have. So we'll deal with it, okay? First of all, formulas. Formulas. So, I say select cell A103. Okay. I'm going to change it to cell A101. If you were in 2010, I would have been 2 rows further down. Because when I created the pivot table, I chose A100, didn't I? But in 2013, it puts the filter and the page above where you're starting. In 2010, it would have put the filter page right there and moved everything down. Okay? So, I say choose A103, but because I'm in 2013, choose A101. Question?
Mine is, for some reason, you said that the values in the columns label, and it says like values is the row 100, and then everything else underneath it. So mine starts in 102. Do you think that's
okay? Choose 102. So, so you're not in 2013. You're in 2010.
2007, but it's.
You're in 2007.
Yeah.
You sure?
Yeah, I think so.
No, you would never have been able to read the database. You're in 2010, young lady. You wouldn't be able to read the Access database if it's 2007. Listen. The symbol for Access 10 and 13 is .ACCDB. If you're in 2007, it's MDB. They're different file formats. Microsoft changed it. So if this lady's in 2007, that's what it would want to read for the Access database. The fact you read my database tells me you're not 7, you have to be 10. Have to be. Okay? Okay. Now, everybody has the first cell chosen. This is our dependent or independent variable that we're working on first.
Independent.
Well done. Well done. Now, formula, name manager. Okay, I have the 2 already there from this morning. I'm going to delete them. I'm going to take them out. Gone. Okay? So what you should be seeing is exactly what I'm seeing. Everyone agree? Okay, new. We're going to create a dynamic range name. New. Now, let's just have a look at my sheet. 28, row 28, select define name, okay? And then we're going to choose new, and we're going to type X underscore uppercase X. It doesn't matter whether you're uppercase or lowercase, but you should make it look nice. X underscore, and this is our independent variable. Okay? So that's the name it's going to have. Be careful, be careful. Okay, a name, just click on the drop down. A name can be specific to the workbook or to a sheet. If you make it specific to a sheet, then another sheet is going to have trouble seeing it. There is a way when you're on a different sheet to see it. But what we're going to do is, we're just getting started, leave it as workbook. And that means every sheet in our workbook can see the name when we create it. Okay? Now, we can have a comment, but we don't need a comment. Now, this is where you got to be careful. I'm now at row 31. I'm at row 31. Range off. Range off what is sitting in the first two and hit the backspace key. Get rid of it. Okay? Now, what we've got to type is what's on row 31. But don't start yet. Don't start yet. That's where you've got to be really careful, because Excel is going to try and fill it in for you. And Excel will sometimes do it incorrectly because it doesn't know exactly what we're trying to do. So I can get started by clicking that cell. Okay? Which is what I had before.